My attorney has had the custody petition ready for 3 weeks.
What terms?
Primary custody. Mina relocates to Denver. Structured visitation for you. My attorney believes the court will favor stable income over a struggling ranch.
You already have a job in Denver.
The court considers the child's best interests, consistent caregiving, stable environment.
12 years. Every mortgage, every credit card, every tank of gas so she could drive 45 minutes to see another man. All of it funded by the husband sitting directly across that table. She hadn't just planned to leave. She'd planned to take Mina with her. And he had been paying for every single layer of it. What Maverick placed inside that folder left her attorney in Billings absolutely no choice but to fold. Stay right here, because what he already knew will leave you completely speechless.
My name is Maverick Ellison, 38 years old. I run a cattle ranch outside Cody, Wyoming, about 20 minutes east on Route 14, backed up against the Absaroka Range. Nothing but dry grass and open sky in every direction. I have believed one thing my entire adult life. A man takes care of his family. No argument, no exceptions. For 12 years, I did exactly that. And then, one phone call. On a Tuesday afternoon in June, standing in a dust field with a broken fence post in my hand, made me question whether everything I had built was sitting on ground that was never solid to begin with. What I did not know yet was that my wife had already been preparing to walk out of our lives, and she had not told a single soul. The morning it all began was the kind of Wyoming morning that makes you believe the world was made specifically for you. Second week of June, the sky over Park County ran wide and cloudless. That particular shade of blue you only get at altitude. The kind that does not apologize for being beautiful. I had been out since 5:30, moving cattle along the south pasture with Tao in Washington, my closest friend, the most reliable man I have ever known. The Absaroka Range sat on the eastern horizon like something painted there deliberately, snowcaps still holding on even in June, throwing long gold lines of early light across the dry grass below. I was resetting a fence post that 3 of my Angus steers had apparently taken personal offense to. My Stetson pulled low, dark brown, brim bent just the way I like it, boots caked in red Wyoming dirt. This was my life, and on most mornings, I loved it completely. My phone vibrated in my shirt pocket. I pulled it out, half expecting Talon, asking about the east water line. It was my wife. Mav, the SUV payment got flagged again. Did you transfer the money? I've got a group thing tonight in Cody and I can't be late. No hello. No how's the fence holding up, just the money. I stood there with the phone against my ear and the sun pressing on the back of my neck. And I did what I had trained myself to do over 12 years of marriage. I said, I'll take care of it. And I ended the call. But this time, something was different. I stood in that field and ran the numbers the way I run numbers for the ranch. Without sentiment, without excuses. Her SUV payment, her gym membership, her monthly subscription boxes. One for clothing, one for something called curated wellness, which as near as I could tell meant expensive candles and a small packet of herbal tea I had never once seen her brew. Her credit card, her phone bill, gas money every time she drove 45 minutes into Cody for reasons that had nothing to do with me, or Mina, or this ranch. I paid for all of it. Every single line item. Every month. 12 years. Every dollar. Not once did she ask where it came from. Meanwhile, this summer's drought had pushed feed costs up nearly 30%. The south fence was on its 3rd repair in 8 months. I had been quietly moving money between accounts for weeks just to keep us in the green. She had not once asked how the ranch was holding. I walked back to my truck. A 12-year-old F250 with a cracked dashboard and a heater that worked about 60% of the time. And I sat there with the engine off and the windows down, the dry Wyoming heat pressing in from every direction. 5 months back, something had shifted in me that I could not fully name at the time. I installed a shared banking app on both our phones. Layla thought it was for convenience. She was partly right. Because what I had been seeing in that app over the past 5 months had been quietly collecting at the back of my mind. Like water rising behind a dam I had not fully realized I was building. Small transfers to an account I did not recognize. Not large enough to alarm anyone who was not watching. Just initials. P.B. Twice in February. 4 times in March. A debit charge at a Denver restaurant I had never heard of. Layla had not been to Denver. Not that she had told me. That night, after I put Mina to bed, my 7-year-old, who had fallen asleep mid-sentence telling me about the spotted foal in the east paddock, I sat alone on the back porch. The Absarokas had gone dark purple, then black. Stars came in over the ridge the way they always do out here, thick and unhurried, like they had nowhere else to be. I opened my notebook, wrote 2 words at the top of the first clean page. Day 1. I did not know exactly what I was going to find, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was done living in the dark. Stay with me. Because what I discovered on day 4 was something I never once saw coming. Day 1. I stopped every non-essential payment tied to Layla. Her gym membership, paused. Her subscription boxes, canceled. The personal spending transfer I had been sending every 2 weeks since the year Mina was born, gone. I still paid the mortgage, still covered Mina's schooling and her riding lessons at the stable off Highway 120. Still kept the lights on and food in the house. The ranch did not stop. Mina did not stop. But the personal spending, the kind Layla had never once budgeted for, never once accounted for, never once said thank you for, that stopped on a Tuesday night at 9:17 p.m. She did not notice for 2 full days. On day 3, she called while I was mending wire on the east pasture. "Mav, my class pass isn't working." "I know," I said. I paused it. "Feed costs are running high this month." Silence. Then, "Okay, fine." She hung up. I had given her 12 years of everything I had. She gave me 4 letters and hung up. Psychologists have a term for what I have been experiencing. They call it invisible labor fatigue. It is the specific, quiet exhaustion that builds in a person who has been giving steadily and silently for so long that they have stopped expecting acknowledgement. Not because they no longer need it, but because they have learned not to ask for what is never offered. It does not arrive with drama. It arrives the way drought arrives in Wyoming, gradually, almost gently. Until one morning you walk out to the south pasture and realize the grass has been gone for weeks and you simply stopped noticing. I had stopped noticing. Or more honestly, I had been afraid of what I would see if I looked directly. Day 4. I noticed something I had not expected. Layla seemed lighter, almost cheerful at breakfast, pouring coffee, humming something low and soft, the way she used to hum in the early years when the world still felt like it had been arranged specifically for the 2 of us. I watched her from across the kitchen table while Mina ate her oatmeal and told us both, with the absolute authority of a 7-year-old, that Copper the horse had given her a look that morning that meant he was in a very good mood. Layla smiled at Mina, but her eyes kept pulling toward her phone. I did not understand her mood then. That night, I opened the app and found the answer. My wife had quietly opened a new credit card through a bank branch in Denver. Not our bank in Cody. Applied online, approved 3 days ago, already carrying a charge at a Denver steakhouse I had never heard of. She no longer needed my transfers. She had made herself financially independent of me the same week I had stopped funding her. She had not felt the loss at all. That was the moment I understood this was not impulsive. This had been architected. I pulled up the old records. PB, 6 payments over 5 months, just under $800 in total. I opened my notebook to a new page. She has been planning this for longer than I knew. Day 9. Layla had checked my schedule that morning. She asked over breakfast what time I would be back from the north pasture. I told her late afternoon. The second Baylor's hydraulic line held another 2 hours before it didn't. I was home by noon. I came in through the mudroom, boots off on the mat, moving quietly the way you move in a house where a child might be napping. And that is when I heard her. She was in the front room with Mina. "Mama, why does the man from your phone know my name?" A pause. "He's just a friend, baby." Smooth, practiced. The voice she used when she had already decided on the shape of a sentence before she opened her mouth. "He says when we come to Denver, he's going to get me a real horse." The mug stopped halfway to my mouth. "Pierce says," Layla continued, keeping her tone carefully light, "when you visit, he'll make sure you have everything you need. You'd like Denver, Mina. Big city, lots of things to do." Mina was quiet for a moment, the silence that means she is thinking completely and seriously, the way only a 7-year-old still can. Then, "But Copper is here, Mama. And Daddy is here. I want to stay with Daddy." I set the mug on the counter without a sound. I stood in that doorway and did not go in. Not because I was afraid of the conversation, because I understood. With the cold, clear weight of a man watching the earth shift beneath his feet, that if I walked in before I had everything I needed, I would lose. So I went back to my notebook. Pierce, first name. She said it like he already lived in the furniture of our family. Day 12. I came home early again. As I came around the side of the house, I heard her on the back porch, my porch, where I had sat 3 nights a week watching the Absarokas go dark for 12 years. She was laughing, soft, low, a little breathless. The laugh she used to save for me. "No, he has no idea," she was saying. "He just thinks I'm stressed about money. You know how he is. He goes quiet." I stood at the corner of the house with gravel still under one boot, and I made myself breathe. 4 months earlier, she had been on this same porch, on this same phone, laughing this same way when I had asked who she was talking to. She said, "Just a customer about a shipment." I had believed her. I walked to the shop, got the fitting, drove back to the south pasture. Did not say a word. Day 15. Talon's wife, Renee. The most observant person I have ever known. The kind of woman who notices everything she does not say out loud. Sent me a text with no message, just a screenshot. A Facebook marketplace listing. A woman's watch, gold band. Rectangular face, with an engraving on the back that I had chosen myself. All my days. M. Our 10th anniversary gift. She was asking $140 for it. I saved the screenshot, added it to the folder on my phone that was getting heavier every day. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called sunk cost bias, the deeply human tendency to keep investing in something that is no longer working simply because we have already put so much into it. I had been paying, in every sense, because the alternative felt like a loss I was not ready to absorb. What I was learning, slowly and at real cost, is that the longer you delay seeing the truth, the more expensive that truth becomes. Not just financially, in every way that actually matters. Before I tell you what Talon showed up at my door with on day 20, I need to ask you something directly. If you discovered your spouse had been secretly planning to leave for months, while you were still paying for everything in the marriage, would you confront them immediately? Or would you stay silent, keep watching, and gather every piece of proof first? Drop a yes or a no in the comments right now. Or tell me, what would you actually do? Because what Talon handed me on day 20 changed every answer I thought I had. Day 20. Talon Washington pulled into my gravel drive at 6:47 in the evening. I know the exact time because I had just finished putting Mina to bed. She had fallen asleep holding a crayon drawing of copper. Lines going in every direction, the way children draw things they love. As if the lines themselves do not matter as long as they reach towards something real. I was standing at the kitchen window, watching the last gold leave the Absarokas when his headlights swept across the yard. He knocked once. I opened the door. He was holding a USB drive, small, black, sitting flat in his palm like something he was not entirely sure he wanted to hand over. "Mav," he said. Just that. The way men say a name when they are carrying something heavy. I stepped back, let him in. We sat at the kitchen table. He did not take off his jacket. His hands rested flat on the table. Big, work-scarred hands that have fixed more fence posts and pulled more cabs than most men twice his age. He looked at the USB for a long moment before he spoke. 5 months ago, he said, I drove into Cody to pick up supplies at Murdoch's, stopped at Daylight Donuts on Bighorn Avenue for coffee, and I saw Layla in a booth near the back. He paused. She was with a man I did not recognize. Not from around here. City clothes. I took pictures on my phone. Then I sat in my truck for an hour trying to decide what I was actually looking at. He was quiet for a moment. I showed them to Renee that night. She told me to wait. She said if there was some explanation, if I was somehow reading it wrong, I could destroy your marriage just by saying the words. So I waited.
He looked at the table.
2 weeks ago, Layla called Renee asking if she knew a good family attorney in Billings who handled, and I'm quoting her here, complicated situations. Said it casually, like she was asking about a dentist.
He slid the USB across to me.
That's when I knew I had waited long enough. I'm sorry, Mav. I should have come sooner.
I picked up the drive. Thank you, I said. He put his hand on my shoulder for exactly 1 moment, the kind of gesture that carries everything a man cannot put into words. And then he walked back out, got in his truck, and drove away without looking back. I plugged the drive into my laptop at the kitchen table. 2 photographs, clear, daylight.
Shot from about 15 feet away through the front window of Daylight Donuts. The faint reflection of Bighorn Avenue caught in the glass behind them. My wife. And a man whose face I had spent 3 days trying to confirm. Pierce Bennett. 36 years old, based in Denver. Urban development. The kind of man who talks about opportunity like it is something he personally invented. In the first photograph, they were laughing. She was leaning toward him, her hand resting on the table near his. In the second, he had covered her hand with his. She was looking at him the way I had not seen her look at anything connected to me in a very long time. I closed the laptop. I want to stop here because this moment, sitting alone at a kitchen table in Wyoming, looking at photographs of your wife with another man, deserves more than a description of how it felt. It deserves honesty about what it actually means. Psychologists who study marital betrayal identify a pattern they call emotional withdrawal sequencing. It describes the way a person who has decided to leave a relationship does not leave all at once. They leave in layers. First, emotional availability disappears. The laughter, the eye contact, the small daily gestures of affection we rarely notice until they are gone. Then comes parallel life construction, building a new identity, a new financial reality, new relationships, all while the existing marriage continues to function on the surface. The final stage is called exit readiness, the point at which the new life is complete enough that the physical departure is simply a formality. Layla had not suddenly stopped loving our marriage. She had been leaving it in layers for months. And I had been funding every single layer. That is the part that costs you long after the anger fades. The understanding that your own generosity was the scaffolding on which someone else quietly built the structure of your replacement. I went to the study, printed everything on the old printer that jams every third page and sounds personally offended about it. The bank records, the Denver credit card, the transfers to PB, the marketplace listing for the anniversary watch, Talon's photographs. I laid it all out on the kitchen table under the overhead light, and then I sat down and looked at all of it. And I realized something that turned my stomach cold in a way the evidence itself had not. None of this, not one single piece of it, would have mattered if she had been just a little more careful. She had not been careful because she had not believed I was paying attention. That was the thing she had gotten wrong. That was the only thing. My wife came in from the garage at 7:45. She stopped in the kitchen doorway, looked at the table, looked at me. The color did not leave her face all at once. It drained slowly. The way color leaves when something has been held under pressure for a very long time, and the pressure is suddenly, completely gone. She sat down across from me. I did not raise my voice. I did not stand. "How long," I said, "have you been planning to leave?" The silence that followed was long enough that Copper shifted in his paddock outside, and I could hear it through the screen. "Mav, I'm not asking to fight," I said. "I'm asking because I would like to understand what I have been funding." Her hands on the table were still, but her eyes were moving, side to side, the way eyes move when a person is calculating rather than deciding. That distinction matters. Deciding requires honesty. Calculating requires only strategy. What I was watching across my kitchen table was not a woman deciding how to tell me the truth. It was a woman calculating which version of the truth would cost her the least. There is a meaningful difference between a person who made a mistake and a person who made a plan. Mistakes carry shame. Plans carry arithmetic. What I was looking at felt exactly like arithmetic. She said nothing for a long time. The coyote was back on the North Ridge. I waited. Because I had learned. In 38 years of Wyoming weather, Wyoming cattle, and Wyoming silence, that sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is simply refuse to fill the quiet. The quiet, eventually, fills itself. What came out of her mouth next was not a confession. It was the single most devastating thing she could have said, and it turned everything I thought I had prepared for completely upside down. She said, "I have a petition ready to file." Just like that. No buildup, no softening, like she had been holding those words just behind her teeth, and the weight of the photographs on that table had finally pushed them free. My attorney in Billings has had the paperwork prepared for 3 weeks. I asked him to hold the filing until I had this conversation with you first. I wanted to give you the chance to agree to the terms before it became a court matter. I looked at her steadily. What terms? Primary residential custody of Mina. Structured visitation for you. I have secured employment in Denver. My attorney believes the court will look favorably at Mina relocating. given the inconsistent income from the ranch and the fact that I will have stable employment and established schooling arranged. She had a job in Denver. She had a job in Denver, and she had not told me. The court considers the child's best interests, she continued, and I could hear her attorney in every word now. The cadence was not hers. Regular income, consistent caregiving, a stable daily environment. I held up one hand. Quietly, she stopped. 3 weeks ago, I said. She looked up. I started my 30-day experiment 3 weeks and 1 day ago. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence. She had prepared her legal paperwork the same week I had opened my notebook and written Day 1. We had both been watching each other from opposite ends of the same hallway. Each of us certain the other did not know. Neither of us understanding yet that we were both already in motion. That realization did not make me feel clever. It made me feel the full, exhausting weight of how long we had both been pretending. I want to be honest about how that moment landed. It did not feel like the movies. No roaring in the ears, no slow-motion loss of focus. It felt like the moment a hydraulic line blows, a sharp crack, and then everything that was supposed to hold suddenly is not. And you are standing in the field already understanding what has to happen next, before the feeling of it has even arrived. There is a psychological process researchers call narrative reframing. It describes the way a person who has caused genuine harm to someone begins to reconstruct the shared history of a relationship, slowly, selectively, repositioning themselves as the one who was wronged. It is not always a conscious decision. That is the most important thing to understand. Layla may not have sat down one morning and decided to be dishonest. What is more likely is that over months, perhaps longer, she had been quietly editing the story of our marriage in her own mind, pulling forward the moments that supported the version of herself she needed to believe. The man who paid for everything became the man who controlled everything. The husband who asked no questions became the husband who left no room. The provider became the problem. This is how people leave without feeling like the person who chose to leave. They rewrite the story until the departure feels not only justified, but necessary. And by the time the paperwork is prepared, they have been living inside that rewritten story for so long that it feels completely, absolutely true to them. That is not an excuse for what she did, but it is an explanation for how a person can smile over morning coffee and have a custody petition sitting in a Billings law office by afternoon. Understanding that was the only thing that kept me from losing myself completely in that kitchen. I stood up, not in anger, in the deliberate way a man stands when he is choosing to be measured, because the alternative costs him everything. You told Mina about Pierce, I said. Layla's jaw tightened. You told a 7-year-old that a man she has never met would buy her a horse in Denver. You were preparing to take her there, the visit, the trial month, build a new routine before I could respond. Pierce can give her things. Pierce, I said, has never shoveled a stall in the dark, has never held a calf through a cold March night to make sure it was still breathing by morning, has never fixed a fence line in mud season so a little girl would have somewhere safe to ride a horse she loves. I held her gaze. Pierce can give her things. I am her father. There is something in psychology called the competence-warmth trade-off. It describes the two dimensions by which we instinctively evaluate people, what they can provide, and how genuinely they care. Pierce represented competence, resources, novelty, the promise of something larger. I represented warmth, the kind of love that looks like labor because it is labor. What Layla failed to calculate is that competence without warmth is not a life. It is a performance. And children are among the most accurate judges of the difference. Mina had already chosen. She chose copper and the ranch and her daddy. She chose warmth. No amount of Denver was going to rewrite what a 7-year-old already understood in her bones. "I will not stop you from going," I said. "I will not make a scene. But you will not take Mina out of Park County on the strength of a story built on a rewrite. And you will not use money I earned to dismantle the family I built." She was crying now, not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, shoulders slightly forward, breath catching in a way that cannot be controlled, the honest kind. "Mav, go stay with your sister tonight," I said. "Take what you need, but Mina stays home." She stood. For a long moment she looked toward the hallway, toward Mina's room. I did not move. "She's asleep," I said quietly. "You will not wake her up to put her in a car in the dark over a conversation we are not finished having. That is not what a good mother does, and I think you know that." Something crossed her face that was not calculation, just for a moment. Then she turned, walked to the bedroom, and I heard the closet, the bathroom cabinet, the zip of the blue duffel bag we had bought at Target in Billings the summer Mina was 4. At 8:41, she came back through the kitchen, stopped at the back door. "My attorney will be in contact," she said. "That's fine," I said. "Mine will be ready." She left, gravel under her tires, headlights east on 14A. Then nothing but the dark and the sound of a ranch that still had work to do in the morning. I went inside, checked on Mina, one arm thrown over Copper's crayon drawing, sound asleep. I sat at the kitchen table, opened the notebook, day 20, and beneath that, one line. The thing I had needed to say to myself for longer than 30 days. She chose this, not me. What came in the weeks that followed was the part of the story I had never once thought to plan for. The part that finally gave me back something I did not know I had lost. The divorce was finalized 5 months after Layla walked out the kitchen door with the blue duffel bag. Wyoming family courts move at a pace that would test anyone who had never tried to move Angus cattle across a creek in mud season. Slowly, deliberately, and with outcomes that depend entirely on who did the preparation. I had done the preparation. Every transfer record, every bank statement, the Denver credit card opened in secret, 8 months of payments to Pierce Bennett, the marketplace listing for the anniversary watch, Talon's photographs from Daylight Donuts, and Talon's account of Layla calling Renee, asking about a family attorney in Billings, casually, like she was asking about a dentist. My attorney, Patricia Owens, who operated out of an office on Sheridan Avenue in Cody and had the quiet, unhurried authority of someone who has won a great many rooms without ever raising her voice in any of them, told me on our first meeting that documentation is the only language a family court genuinely trusts. I handed her a folder. She looked through it slowly, then looked up at me over her glasses. "Mr. Ellison, you've been thorough." "I run a ranch," I said. "You learn to track what matters." She almost smiled. 2 weeks after Patricia disclosed the evidence file to Layla's attorney in Billings, I got a phone call. "Opposing counsel has filed a motion to withdraw the custody petition," Patricia said, in the same unhurried voice she used for everything. I sat very still on the other end of the line. Once the financial record is laid alongside the third-party documentation, the risk calculation changes significantly. A custody claim built on financial control becomes considerably harder to sustain when the court can see exactly where the money went and exactly who received it. She paused. "Your wife's attorney advised her to settle. She was wise enough to listen. Mina stayed home. Copper stayed in his paddock. I want to name something here that I think is important, something that does not get discussed enough when people talk about what comes after. Psychologists describe a process called post-traumatic growth, the documented pattern in which people who survive genuine crisis and loss do not simply return to who they were, in specific and measurable ways. They become stronger in the exact areas where the crisis broke them. I did not feel strong in the first weeks after Layla left.
I want to be honest about that.
I felt the absence the way you feel a missing tooth. Not constantly, but in unexpected moments, when you reach for something that used to be there. The second coffee mug in the morning, the sound of another adult moving through the house after Mina went to sleep. The ordinary, unremarkable weight of sharing a life with someone that you do not fully recognize until it is no longer there. But post-traumatic growth does not mean the absence stops hurting. It means you stop letting the hurt make your decisions for you. That is the work. And the work takes time. The first few weeks after the finalization were the quietest of my life. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. The kind of quiet that sits in a house where something large used to be and now is not. I got through them the way I get through a bad stretch on the ranch. One morning at a time. One task in front of the other, not looking too far down the road. Mina helped. She always helps, without knowing she is doing it. 3 weeks after the divorce was final, Talon and a few of the other ranch hands showed up on a Saturday morning. No phone call ahead, just trucks in the yard, tools in hand, coffee thermoses, and the easy silence of men who do not need to explain why they have come. We worked the south fence until early afternoon. Somebody brought biscuits from the diner on 16th Street in Cody. We ate at the tailgate of Talon's truck. Nobody talked much about Layla. Nobody needed to. That is the thing about men who have worked beside each other for years. They learn to do what needs doing without requiring a conversation about it first. I have been grateful for that kind of friendship my entire adult life. I was more grateful for it in those weeks than I had words to express. By the time September came, I had started to recognize the quiet for what it actually was. Not an absence, a beginning. And I understood something I had been too close to see while I was living inside it. I had confused providing with being present. They are not the same thing. Generosity given without honest attention is not love. It is a habit, and habits, unchecked, can blind you to what is happening at your own kitchen table, in your own marriage, in a booth at the back of a donut shop on Bighorn Avenue. I had been a keeper of peace, paying to avoid disruption, staying quiet to preserve a surface that had already hollowed out underneath. Keeping the peace means not disturbing what is already there. Building it means doing the harder, slower, more honest work of making something true. I had been a keeper. I needed to become a builder. The evening I understood all of this clearly. Mina came out to the back porch in that loose-limbed, half-asleep walk that means she is not quite all the way back from wherever she was dreaming. She put her hand on my arm. "Daddy, is Copper okay?" "Copper's just fine," I said. "He's in his paddock, probably dreaming, same as you were." She considered this with complete seriousness. Then she leaned against my arm. "I don't want to go to Denver," she said. Not sad, just settled. The way she says things, she has already decided completely. "I know, baby," I said. "You're staying right here." She was asleep in about 90 seconds, still leaning against me, warm and small and trusting in the way children trust the people they have chosen without ever once having to think about it. I sat there long after the stars came in thick over the ridge. I thought. This is what I was protecting. Not a marriage that had stopped being real. This porch, this mountain, this child, this was everything. And in the months that followed, something unexpected began. The part of this story I am most grateful to be able to tell. 6 months later. I still wear the dark brown Stetson every morning. Still pull on the boots with the cracked left heel I keep meaning to take to the cobbler on Sheridan Avenue and keep not taking. Still drive the old F250 out to the South Line, with coffee going cold in the cup holder before I am halfway there. Some things do not change. But some things have changed completely. The first weeks after the finalization were hard. I am not going to dress that up. The house had a new kind of quiet in it that took some getting used to. A quiet that was not comfortable yet, just honest. I got through it the way ranchers get through everything that cannot be fixed in a day, by showing up the next morning anyway. Mina made it possible. She always has. She turned 8 in September. We had her birthday at the ranch. Talon brought his kids. A few families from her school drove out from Cody. Patricia Owens sent a card with a handwritten note. Well done, Mr. Ellison. I made my mother's potato salad for the first time in 4 years. Spilled paprika all over the recipe card. Written in 1987 in the careful cursive she reserved for things she wanted to last. I stood in my kitchen looking at that orange-dusted card, and I laughed. The kind that comes from somewhere real. The kind I had not heard from myself in a long time. Mina got the horse. Not a Denver promise from a man she barely knew, a real one. A small gray mare just coming 4 years old, with a blaze on her nose and the kind of calm temperament that is the most valuable quality in a horse when your rider is 8 years old and fearless and still learning how much weight she can carry. Mina named her Pearl. She introduced Pearl and Copper with the grave ceremony of a diplomat conducting sensitive international negotiations. I watched from the paddock fence. One boot on the bottom rail, one hand on the post, and felt something loosen in my chest that I had not realized had been clenched. Psychologists who study recovery from betrayal describe a stage they call meaning reconstruction, the process by which a person who has experienced significant loss begins to rebuild not just the daily shape of their life, but their understanding of what that life is for. It is not the same as forgetting. It is not the same as forgiving. In the easy sense that word is sometimes used. It is the slow, deliberate work of deciding what an experience taught you, and choosing to let that teaching be worth something. Here is what I know now that I did not know before. Generosity given without honest attention is not a virtue. It is a vulnerability. Not because giving is wrong. Giving is one of the finest things a person can do. But giving without ever stopping to ask whether your giving is meeting a real need or simply covering a real absence, that is not love. That is avoidance wearing love's clothing. The 30 days did not save my marriage. They saved me from spending another 12 years inside one that had already ended. That is worth something. That is worth a great deal. Some mornings now, before I head out, Mina catches me at the back door. "Daddy, can I come today?" Sometimes the work is heavy, and I say, "Not today." Bug. But sometimes I say yes, and I lift her up into the truck beside me. And we drive out along Route 14 with the windows down. The Absarokas running along the eastern horizon the way they always have, patient and enormous and completely indifferent to the small human dramas happening at their feet. She asks questions the whole way, about the cattle, about why the grass changes color in August, about whether Pearl can tell when a storm is coming. I answer every one. Because she is 8 years old, and the world is still something she is genuinely curious about. And I have learned, later than I should have, that being the person someone turns their curiosity toward is one of the finest things you can be. It is worth more than any payment I ever made. This story teaches us that money can buy presents, and presents can masquerade as love for a surprisingly long time. But there will always come a moment. A Tuesday afternoon in a dusty field, a late-night banking app, a screenshot of a watch engraved with your own words, when the masquerade ends. And in that moment, the only question that remains is not what the other person chose. It is what you are going to do with everything you have learned. I chose to stop funding the silence. I chose to see clearly, even when clearly was the most painful direction to look. I chose to stay on this ranch, in this valley, under these mountains, and raise my daughter to know that the most powerful thing a person can do is not keep paying for something that has already been decided without them. It is have the courage to stop, look honestly at what is real, and build something true with what remains. I still put on the Stetson every morning, but I wear it differently now. I wear it for Mina and for the man I am still becoming, one honest day at a time. And that. At the end of 30 days and 5 months and 6 quiet seasons in the shadow of the Absarokas is more than enough. This story is for every good man who has ever confused being taken for granted with not being good enough. And for every grandmother, every mother, every woman who has quietly watched a faithful man be overlooked and held on to the hope that truth and dignity eventually win. They do. They always do. They just ask that you be patient enough and brave enough to stop long enough to see them. These are authentic human stories shaped by real pain and real dreams. AI helped with grammar, flow, and structure, but the heart, the moral weight, and the life-changing lessons belong entirely to the human creators and their audience. Production team: story and screenplay by Quinn Fung. Character development and visual conceptualization by Chris Nguyen. Video scripting and scene adaptation by David Nguyen. A passionate team dedicated to bringing this story to life.